I always thought my life was simple and ordinary. A small house in the countryside, old furniture, a kitchen with peeling paint, and a stock of cheap noodles, canned food, and rice. My parents told me we lived modestly, that money wasn't the most important thing, and I got used to it. I didn't have expensive toys, new phones, or branded clothes, but it seemed normal. Sometimes I saw my parents leaving in the evenings, but they always said they were going to a night job just to make ends meet. I wasn't allowed in their bedroom without permission, and that also seemed normal. One evening, when I was 15, I woke up to a strange noise. It sounded like something creaked behind the wall. I listened carefully. It was coming from my parents' bedroom. Curiosity got the best of me, but I knew they didn't like it when I entered without their permission. Yet something inside me pushed me to check. I got out of bed and quietly crept to the door. It was slightly open. In the darkness, I could make out their silhouettes. They were moving near the old wardrobe that had always stood in the corner. My father pressed something, and suddenly, with a light click, the wardrobe started to move aside. My heart froze. Behind it, an entrance appeared, leading downward. I stood there, trying to process what I had just seen. My parents stepped down, and the wall shut behind them. My mind was racing with one thought. What the hell was that? I waited until everything was quiet, then approached the wardrobe, running my hands over it, searching for the same spot my father had touched. After a minute, my fingers found a small bump. I pressed it, a creak, a click, and the wardrobe slid open again. In front of me was a staircase descending into darkness. I took a deep breath and started down. My heart pounded so hard, I was afraid it would give me away. The steps creaked under my feet. The air was cool, but smelled expensive, something I had never sensed in our home. At the bottom, a corridor with white walls and soft lighting awaited me. I walked further and lost my breath. Before me stretched a massive underground villa, marble floors, glass walls, illuminated pools, a long hallway leading even deeper. I heard my parents' voices. They were laughing. I snuck closer, hid behind a column, and peeked out. They were sitting on leather couches in a luxurious living room, eating gourmet food and drinking from crystal glasses. They were completely different, not the tired, worn-out people I knew, but confident, wealthy individuals. A shiver ran down my spine. I kept going, peeked into the next room, and saw a wardrobe filled with designer clothes. The next door led to a hall with a huge screen, a racing simulator, and the latest technology. Further down, I found a gym with equipment I had only seen in movies and a golf course that I always thought belonged to our neighbors. I began to realize that the neighbors whose cars I had envied weren't neighbors at all. This was all my parents' property. My pulse pounded in my temples. They had lied to me my whole life, telling me we were poor, that we had to save every penny, that money was scarce. But they had been living in luxury, hiding it from me. Why? For what reason? I couldn't breathe. I wanted to run, to scream, but my feet carried me further on their own. At the end of the corridor, I saw a massive garage. Rows of gleaming cars, Lamborghinis, Rolls Royces, G-Wagons. Everything I had only seen online was parked here, under our house, and nearby was an exit, a tunnel leading somewhere outside. It was the very same route my parents used to leave the house when they thought I was asleep. I couldn't hold back any longer. I walked into the living room, and my parents immediately fell silent when they saw me. Their faces first showed shock, then concern. "You have been lying to me all this time." My voice trembled. My mother glanced at my father. He took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes," he answered calmly. I felt everything inside me boiling. Why, my mother stood up, walked toward me, tried to take my hand, but I pulled away. "We wanted you to grow up as a normal person, without corruption, without the feeling that money determines everything," she said quietly. "Normal. You fed me instant noodles when you could buy a restaurant. You made me think we were poor." "We didn't want you to become spoiled," my father said firmly. "Money ruins people, son. We have seen what happens to wealthy kids. Wealth corrupts them. We wanted you to know the value of simple things." I was shaking. "You took away my choice. You deprived me of the truth." My father looked into my eyes. "Yes, maybe. But you grew up honest, strong, and independent. You didn't know you had money, so you learned to handle life on your own. Isn't that a good thing? I clenched my fists. Everything inside me was storming, but a part of me understood that there was some truth in his words. But could I forgive the lie? I turned and left. I didn't know what to do next, but one thing I knew for sure: my life would never be the same. I walked out of their underground palace. My heart was pounding wildly. My thoughts were tangled. The air felt thick and heavy. I couldn't believe that my life had been a lie. I walked through the same wardrobe, returned to my room, lay on my bed, and stared at the ceiling. I didn't know what to feel: anger, resentment, confusion, maybe all at once. I had lived for 15 years thinking we were poor, that the world was like this, that life was a struggle, that I had to work hard for a future. While all this time my parents were bathing in luxury, I couldn't sleep. It felt like I had lost myself. In the morning I got up as usual, but something inside me had changed. I felt it. My parents were sitting in the kitchen. In front of them was the cheap oatmeal I had eaten all my life. But now it felt fake to me, like this was just a play. I sat across from them, silently watching. They were waiting for me to say something, but I didn't want to speak. My father put his spoon down, looked me in the eye, and said that he understood how hard this was for me. That they didn't expect me to find out so soon. That they had planned to tell me later when I was older. I just smirked, because what would have changed in a couple of years? A lie would still be a lie. My mother said they never meant to hurt me. They truly wanted me to know real life, that money doesn't bring happiness, but can take everything away. I couldn't believe it. I had spent my life dreaming of better things I couldn't afford. Yet they had always been there, just hidden underground. I walked out of the house. I needed to be alone. I walked through the village streets, looking at the neighbors who lived just like me. But now I knew that my life had been an illusion. I felt like a stranger in this world. I sat on an old bench by the store, where I always bought cheap snacks. I watched the people passing by and wondered why my parents did this. Then I remembered how my father always said that what matters is the kind of person you are, not how much money you have. I remembered how he taught me to work hard, how my mother told me that happiness is in the little things. And suddenly, I realized that all these years, I had never felt unhappy. Yes, I didn't have expensive things, but I always found joy in what I had. I had real friends. I had fun at school. I dreamed. I strived. I wasn't spoiled by money. I was ordinary, just like my parents wanted. I went back home, looked at them, and asked why I needed to know this now. My father sighed and said that now that I knew the truth, I had a choice. If I wanted to keep living in this house, they wouldn't stop me. If I wanted to move into their real home, the doors were open for me. I thought about it because now I didn't have to pretend to be poor, but at the same time, I didn't know if I wanted that luxurious life. I asked for time to think. My parents didn't pressure me. They said they would respect any decision I made. In the following weeks, I started noticing things I hadn't seen before. I saw how my simple life had taught me to value friendship, how I found happiness in small things, how I was happy just riding my old bike instead of a fancy car. I realized that money gives opportunities, but it doesn't make you happy. And then I decided that I didn't want to lose myself. I told my parents that I wanted to stay in our small house. I wanted to live as I had. But now I knew I had a choice, that at any moment I could open the wardrobe and enter another world, but only if I truly needed to. My parents smiled. They said they were proud of me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I truly understood why they had done all this. They weren't just hiding money. They were teaching me to be a person. And now I knew what really mattered in this world. And it wasn't wealth. It was who you are without it.